All right.
Come on in.
Hi, Lenore.
I was trying to get you. I was at home. My daughter was there, and we just weren't ready to leave. I said, "Okay, well, let me get it on the computer." And I didn't know how to open it.
Yeah, well,
I'll have to find out.
I have to invite you in order for you to.
Yes, you did.
Oh, did I? Okay.
You do that every week.
Oh, you get every week. Okay.
But I don't know how to open it to be part of it.
I'll show you next time. All right, we are verse 7, chapter 20, verse 7. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
We're on 20.
Where are we?
We're 27.
No, we were going to kind of finish Shabbat and then start with 12.
Yeah. I remember. Right. Yeah, we do have to finish Shabbat though. We're not done with
12,
Shabbat.
up to 12.
So let's go back to let's just go back to 8. We'll read Shabbat again.
Exodus 20.
Chapter 20, verse 8.
8?
Yeah, we'll go back to 8.
Okay.
Oh, remember the Sabbath.
Remember
Right.
the Sabbath day, keep it holy.
Hey, Dina, guess
Are
what?
you drinking tea?
Yeah. I haven't had a Diet Coke since November 9th.
Good for you.
Yep. So, but now I'm addicted to Earl Grey tea. So
When
I just have an
the
addictive.
first day I met
Yeah,
you.
you got to go with the herbal so that you get off the caffeine.
Well, this is not caffeinated, I don't think.
I remember,
Is it decaffeinated Earl Grey?
I'll put it this way: the first package I bought in December was decaffeinated. Since then, I haven't checked.
okay, the first day I met.
L'chaim.
The first day I
Oh,
met,
chances are it's not.
Yeah, probably.
I had a Coke in his hand. I said, "Oh, we got to do something about that." And,
Yeah,
and he said to me, "Oh no."
Not in a million years. All right. So I'll just read this again so that we have the text behind us.
Okay.
Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, or your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them, and God rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
Okay.
So your son or daughter, there's quite a bit of commentary here that Rashi says who are still children, because really mitzvot, children aren't obligated in mitzvot.
No, they're
But here he says your son or daughter who are still children. Perhaps it refers to them after they are grown. No, they themselves are commanded personally about the Sabbath. Son or daughter here is a command to adults about their young children. As it says in Shabbat, if a child tries to put out a fire, do not let him, for his Sabbath observance is your responsibility. So it's interesting. Rashi, this is a mitzvah on adults, but the mitzvah is to make sure that your kids don't break the Sabbath. Why? Because he is old enough to obey the commandments. He is commanded just like you. Every Jew is obligated to keep an eye on his young son or daughter on the Sabbath to see that they do not do anything that is forbidden to them. The same is true with slaves and cattle and with the stranger. He may only live in your land on the condition that he do no work on the Sabbath. In the sense of the list in our verse is, so the sense of the list in our verse is you and everyone who is under your authority. But there is a legal difference between the various categories in terms of the punishment they suffer for violating the Sabbath. As I have already explained, one who works on the Sabbath does not deny God, but he does deny God's creation of the world. We've seen in Jeremiah that though the prophet was extremely strict about Sabbath observance, he nonetheless said explicitly, despite the fact that Jerusalem's destruction had already been decreed, that if Israel would return to Sabbath observance, they would not be exiled, and the thrones of the Davidic dynasty would remain standing in Jerusalem. That's the basis, I imagine, for this idea amongst the ultra-Orthodox that if every Jew were to observe this one Shabbat, if every Jew on the same Shabbat observed Shabbat, the Messiah would come.
Really?
Yeah.
okay.
That's interesting.
Can we believe that?
That's very interesting.
Who knows?
That's interesting.
It's another way of saying that.
How would you know every Jew
Right,
was
right, right.
observing the Sabbath?
That's an impossibility. So that's
Why?
kind of, well,
Because we're not all in the same place at the same
You
time
don't have
on
to
the
be.
earth.
No, it doesn't matter. If everyone observes Shabbat wherever they are,
Right.
the Messiah will come.
who's going to check on it? Who can
Look, the
possibly
Jewish community has
prove
done
that?
bigger things before.
I don't know. We're in 20 verse.
Ibn Ezra understands the phrase, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it, to mean that God set this day aside for the soul to receive additional wisdom. On Shabbat, our souls receive additional wisdom.
It does.
You have time to
If you observe it.
reflect. You
Right.
have time to reflect.
Right.
You're too busy during the week.
So, according to Rashi, God blessed the Sabbath by providing a double portion of manna on Friday so that there would be food for the Sabbath, and he sanctified it by not giving manna on the Sabbath so no one would be forced to work to gather food.
That's a really interesting distinction between bless and sanctify. You bless something by adding to it. You sanctify by taking away, right? So the way that Rashi understands the idea of sanctification of holiness is it comes from, in Leviticus, there's a verse that says, Kedoshim tihiyu ki kadosh ani Adonai. You shall be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy. And the way he understands that is the way that you become holy is by refraining from prohibited sexual activity. That's the way he understands it. But the Nachmanides, Ramban, builds upon that and says it has nothing to do with sex. It's about refraining in general. That what makes you holy is when you take yourself away from, when you distinguish yourself from other people, from other acts, from things like that.
And self-control.
Yeah. Yes, to a certain extent. But I would only add it's self-control and self-control in contradistinction to other people's. It's not just if everyone, it's not just everyone can be holy by controlling themselves. It's being in control of yourself and being different from other people.
It's like riding. Also driving in a car, riding.
I can't hear you.
I don't know what you mean. You just have to speak up. And
riding in a car, for example, people who obey that and don't ride on Saturday are really probably doing something more than they normally would like to do.
Right.
And they're sanctifying by not.
Right. Exactly.
Doing it.
Exactly.
So I have two interesting comments, one by Nachmanides and one by Or HaChaim. Nachmanides says the Sabbath is blessed in that it is the source of blessing for the rest of the week. And it is sanctified because it draws its holiness from the highest spiritual spheres.
So the source of blessing for the rest of the week is the idea that the goal of Shabbat is not to have one day be different than all the other days. The goal of Shabbat is to influence all the other days. It's to be a source of blessing so that we can bring elements of Shabbat into all the other days.
Okay, so but this is the one I thought was really interesting. This is from Or HaChaim. In the literal sense of the verse, ki sheshet yamin, for 6 days, rather than bi sheshet, which means in 6, implies that God created the world to last for only 6 days plus the Sabbath. Then the Sabbath gives the world the spiritual energy to exist for another week, and the cycle goes on continuously.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Wow, that's right.
He creates the world every day, every week.
He
Creates the world every week.
for 6 days, God made the heavens. Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Wow. Oh, I like that a lot. Huh. Not in 6 days, but for 6 days, God made the heavens and the earth. And then Shabbat came, which allowed it to be recreated again. Wow.
Well, that's what Shabbat is to really.
So the follow-up to that essentially is if you don't observe the Shabbat, then you may not have the kirchus, for any better word, to make it through the next week.
That's right.
Right.
It's to renew yourself.
Right.
Wow.
That's an amazing comment. That's wow. I had never heard that before. Wait, I want to get my Orachaim. That's amazing. Oops.
That's in a way threatening.
No, it's not.
Well, no, it
threatening.
kind of is. It kind of is.
It is when you think about it.
No,
in
I
a
don't
way.
like. I don't like to think of threats.
I hear what you're saying.
For people who are really concerned about doing everything 100%, that would, I would think, be threatening.
I think you can absolutely read it that way. I agree with you. I don't think it has to be read that way, but I think you're right. You know what you just made me think of is at night, when we say the Shema at night, the last part of the Shema at night is the Adon Olam. And the last verse of Adon Olam says, Bi'ado afkid ruchi be'tishan uva'ira. In your hand, God, I entrust my soul and my body throughout the night. And then in the morning, we say, Modani lefanecha, thank you, I'm thankful for you, shechazarta b'nishmati, that you gave me back my soul.
Yeah.
And the image that we have is that we, every night, God takes our soul, literally takes our soul. It's like a rechargeable battery and plugs it in. And then we don't know if we're going to get it back in the morning. And when we wake up, right, and when we wake up and we get it, we're, thank you for giving it back to me. But that also is a little scary.
Yeah. It's definitely an equation.
Yeah.
Something that people.
But I love the idea. I really want to find it. I love the idea that God originally only planned for 6 days, but then Shabbat came along and that made it all worthwhile. Let's do it all again.
God knew that in advance, that was how.
Well, that's not how I heard it.
No. It's what he does.
I'm not sure. Maybe that's true, but the way I heard the commentary is, is that God didn't know.
What would happen if it was just 6 days?
Then it would be over.
What would be
The world.
Well, God knew that he was doing. God is the all-knowing God.
Well, that's the point.
So
Okay,
how long is a day?
24 hours?
And is Shabbat the ultimate Shabbat when Mashiach comes?
Right. So that's another question, that when we're talking about creation, a day is not 24 hours.
Oh,
Because the 24-hour period, first of all, time in the Bible is different. But if you want to be scientific about it, the idea of a 24-hour day only exists because of the sun and the moon, right? And the sun and the moon weren't created till the fourth day.
Right.
So we didn't have such a thing. Even the Bible says day one, day two. It doesn't literally mean a day. And so it could mean, and there are certainly many commentaries that have suggested that each day represents, in the Jewish calendar, represents a 2,000-year period, right? So, no, that's not right. Each day represents a 1,000-year period. Yeah, sorry, 1,000-year period. So right now we're in what, 5776? Is that right?
Yeah.
So we're now in the 6th day of creation. And the idea is that when we hit year 6001, we'll be in Shabbat. That will be the Messiah in the 7th day of creation. But let me just make an argument for God didn't know that the world would only last 6 days. So Orach Chaim also suggests that that Adam was created on the 6th day and sinned on that day, and that Shabbat acted as an advocate for Adam in front of God. Shabbat pleaded with God, saying, "No human being has ever been killed. Why should it fall to my lot to be the first day on which a human being is killed?" As a result of this, because God was going to, I guess, kill Adam for his sin. As a result of the Sabbath's plea, Adam was saved from death at that time. When Adam realized when Adam realized this, he composed this psalm, singing the praises of the Sabbath. That's the Psalm of Shabbat. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. So it could be that God didn't know that it was going to last for 6 days, that Adam sinned on the 6th day, and God said, "Enough, this is ridiculous, I'm done." But then Shabbat came along and said, no, it's still worth it. I'm looking for the comment that you read. I don't see it in here.
What sin did Adam commit?
He ate from the tree.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was Eve who ate from the
Well,
tree.
she convinced him
Oh.
to take from the tree.
How much I know.
That's not what you know. It's what you choose at the moment not to remember.
Listen to this.
You've heard it before. You chose not to remember.
In the Talmud, we learn that if someone observes the Sabbath meticulously, his sins will be forgiven, even if they included idolatry of the type Enosh was guilty of. When the Torah writes, and the seventh day will be Sabbath for the Lord your God, the word your God must be understood as the God who is your exclusive God. Therefore, you have thereby indicated that you have accepted God as your only God. Yada, yada, yada. I don't see, wow. I wonder where he makes that comment. I don't see it. This is supposed to be a book of all of his commentaries, but I don't see it.
Yeah, it doesn't give a specific reference. It just says, it goes with verse 11. I mean, they've put it under verse 11, but.
Oh, wait a second. Maybe. Oh, no, I see it now. Right. Yeah. Our sages in the Midrash indicate that prior to the Sabbath, the world was in a constant state of turmoil. When the Sabbath came, the world calmed down. Boy, that's sorry. I don't mean to get stuck on this, but that's just an amazing little piece of Torah. Holy moly. Okay. Let's see what else we have. Are we ready to go on?
Sure.
Did God create Shabbat? Is the act of Shabbat existing? How long did it take God to create the world? Let me ask that. 6 days or 7 days? Do you include Shabbat
It said on the seventh day
They
he
rested.
But where did rest come from? Did God create rest? Was that an act of creation? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. I'm trying to.
I don't have the answer, by the way. I don't know.
No, I understand.
Well, I read this comment last week, also from Or HaChaim. The verse speaks of God having rested, even though the concepts of exertion, fatigue, and rejuvenation cannot apply to God.
Right.
This is to suggest that the prohibition of Sabbath labor is not dependent upon how strenuous an act is. It is just as forbidden to carry a handkerchief and a key in a public domain as it is to be a stevedore. The sense of a Sabbath labor is not measured by physical exertion, but in terms of productive accomplishment within the halachic parameters set by the Torah, whether or not it is hard work in the colloquial sense.
Right. If you
So
leave
that
your
seems
house
to
with little things in your pocket, you have to stop wherever you are. Well, it depends how far away you are. But at a certain point, you have to stop, take the things out, bury them or something, just get rid of them safely, and then you cannot carry things on Shabbat.
But this seems to me to say that Shabbat rest is a productive accomplishment, which means that it was part of creation.
Right.
But we think of Shabbat as a time of renewal.
Yeah.
So you have to sort of renew. God needed to renew himself.
I really can't hear the ladies.
Start over again, just as we need to rest to be able to start over again.
Right. But the question is the act of renewal a creative act?
Why not?
Yes, it is.
The only reason I'm asking is because I at least usually think about saying God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day God rested.
Right.
But if rest is a creative act, then God actually created the world in 7 days. God had to create Shabbat.
Okay,
Right?
I'm going to think of myself as something that I do. For instance, my daughter was here. She had me going to the gym, but I couldn't go every day. It was too much for me. I had to have time to renew my body for the strength to go do it
Right.
again.
But is the act of renewing your body
Uh-huh.
also a creative act?
Yes.
I don't think
yes.
so.
You don't think? Oh,
No, I
okay,
don't.
go ahead. Argue with her, Lenora.
Because if God is doing that, it's a time that God also must stop and
Mhm.
renew. But I don't necessarily think that. I mean, all this other time where people just wandering around, they had to sleep, right? That's rest.
Mhm.
But they had whatever they
But
had
that's
to
not
do.
all
We
right.
don't
Mhm.
consider.
But
God
that's
made-
not rest.
No.
Mhm.
Sleeping isn't rest.
No.
Why not?
The rest that we're talking about,
Right.
just like the work that we're talking about isn't work, the rest that we're talking about isn't rest. It's a rest from creative activity.
Right. Uh-huh.
It's not sleeping rest.
Well, I don't. I would say 6 days, and the seventh day was a rest day.
collapsed.
Nobody, including God, did anything. So it was a day of rest. I don't.
Well,
So,
think
well,
it-
now you just changed your tune. Now you're saying it was not an act of creativity.
No, I don't think it is.
Oh, okay.
Well, like I said, with my body had to renew itself over that rest period. It renewed itself. We renew our thoughts, our mind on Shabbat. We clear our head of all of the work week. And
But that's an action.
but that allows us to do it on that particular day.
Right.
Right. But it is an action. It's not a non-action.
Right. If you've ever tried to meditate, you know that clearing your mind takes a tremendous amount of work.
Yes, I've
Yeah.
done it only on
Yeah.
one great occasion. And
Yeah.
it was.
The only thing I take issue with is I don't believe that God needed to rest.
No.
I don't think God
Mhm.
stopped on Shabbat because he was exhausted, because God was exhausted.
No.
I think God, so what I,
Mhm.
now having listened to you, what I now think is that the initial Shabbat was absolutely an act of creation because God didn't need to rest. So God created Shabbat. And in doing so, God showed us that Shabbat for us is also an act of creation. We have to make Shabbat. In the Vishamru, it says la'asot et ha-Shabbat. You have to make Shabbat.
Mm-hmm.
We have to engage in creative activities in order for Shabbat to be experienced.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, sorry, not but, and in being creative on Shabbat, we have to be creative for a specific purpose. That is to say, creativity in general isn't prohibited because we have to be creative to make Shabbat. But certain elements of creativity are prohibited. And that, I'm now really stretching this, but when we think about what we are allowed to do on Shabbat, so here's an example. We just started streaming Friday night services on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the question before us was, how can we allow that? How can we allow a computer to be set up and turned on Shabbat? And the answer that we came to was, we turn on microphones, we turn on lights, and we do so to enrich Shabbat. Those creative acts of turning on the microphone and turning on the lights, those are done for the sake of making Shabbat, right? And so we can apply the same logic to streaming services. If that act will help make Shabbat for people, then that's something we should do. But in this, I'm sorry?
So how can you say that if you're thinking that way, then coming to services is certainly a very important part in a lot of people's lives
Mm-hmm.
of observance of Shabbat. And you're riding a car, if you live too far, you can't walk it.
No, that's the same
So-
logic applies there. Absolutely.
So it's okay to ride.
Well, look, I'm not saying it's okay or not okay. I'm saying that
No, I think
certainly in the conservative movement, we've said it's okay many, 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 many years ago. But yes, I think you can apply the same logic. That if the creative activity enriches your Shabbat, then you can make the argument that it's permissible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the problems that we have in our Jewish world is the fact that we berate people for using their phones, their smartphones on Shabbat, and we do so through the microphone, right? So here we are using something that technically you're not supposed to use, telling people not to use something else that technically they're not supposed to use. And I think that sounds very inauthentic to people. I think, though, that you could make the argument that using a cell phone on Shabbat for certain purposes is not for the sake of Shabbat. That creative activity, if you're checking a text message or if you're checking, if you're using it for work, that's not creative activity for the sake of Shabbat. If you're calling your mother to wish her Shabbat Shalom, maybe that's creative work for the sake of Shabbat. If you're taking a picture, one could argue that's not creative work for the sake. But the problem with this is, how do you define what is for the sake of Shabbat and what isn't? If I tell someone don't take pictures on Shabbat, they would say, "Oh, but this is such a precious Shabbos memory. I want to hold on to it." How do you argue with that?
Right.
I don't have any answers. I just have all the questions.
We
You think that it God, all 7 days were days of creation and not 6 days?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he created Shabbat.
Yes. And I think in the same way, Shabbat today has to be a day of creation. We cannot it's not enough on Shabbat to stay in bed all day.
No.
To just stop doing. You have to make an effort. You have to go. You don't have to. I'm speaking now to people who come to shul. Okay, for us to make Shabbat, we have to schlep to shul, right? We have to have a special Shabbos lunch. We have to light candles. We have to do. Those are all creative acts. And in fact, this commandment, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat, I think we read last week. The word Zachor, the rabbis associate with all the active, positive commandments. You have to pray. You have to light candles. You have to make kiddush. You have to, all the have-tos, right? The don'ts, the stop working stuff, that really is associated with the Deuteronomy commandment of Shamor. I mean, we have it here, but it's more closely associated with that commandment. Okay.
Well, are you still think that carrying out? I mean, you're saying you're not supposed to walk. You walk to temple. You're not supposed to have things that you're carrying in your pockets. There is nothing in that says, oh yeah, you can. Supposing somebody has a really rotten cold and they need tissues in their pocket, that's okay to go and spread the germs all over.
No, if you have a really rotten cold, you don't go outside.
Well, you're contagious. You're going to pass it to other people.
You don't go outside.
It would be, if you're sick, it's permissible to stay at home.
In the traditional world, it's very black and white. It isn't, of course, but in this sense, it is. You don't carry on Shabbat, period. Now, they have found, so for example, let's say.
So wearing is not carrying.
Exactly. So that's where I was just going to go. So let's say you need to bring your talis to shul. That's why in Israel and in traditional communities, you'll see lots of people wearing their talis to shul. They just wear it as they walk to shul because you're not allowed to carry. Or
But they're actually carrying it.
No, you're
part
not.
of
You're
your
wearing
clothing.
it.
Or
if you have a house key, right? You put it on a necklace and you wear it. So they found.
Or you make it into a belt buckle.
Right. No,
They did.
Okay.
So there are loopholes that they found, but it
Tissues
really
around your
is.
neck.
Right.
It's really very straightforward.
So this idea of resting, you said that the world was in turmoil for 6 days. So is it possible that this concept of Hashem resting was also to allow the world to rest?
I would argue that God rested solely so that the world could rest. God didn't need rest. God was teaching by leading by example. Does that? Am I answering the right question?
Could the possibility?
Well, yes and no, because when you say it that way, it sounds less like a creative act and more like a take a step back and reevaluate act.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to comment. We read it as God rested
Right.
on the seventh day. Could it be that God stopped at the end of the sixth day?
Yes. Isn't stopping an active verb though?
Yes, he stopped of what he had been creating.
Right.
What God had been creating. I want to stop using he. What God was creating. And therefore, the people that God created were able then to also rest on that seventh day. God gave them the day
Right.
to rest.
Right.
You just have to.
But instead of God resting,
rest.
God doesn't
You
need to
can't-
rest.
But remember, rest. What do you mean when you say that?
God,
Why do you have to
You
rest?
stop doing what you're doing.
to me, rest is an act of renewal. To me. So that God doesn't need that renewal.
Right.
God just stopped and allowed us to renew
catch
ourselves.
up.
To renew ourselves.
But just to be clear,
Mhm.
the renewal is not a physical renewal.
No, it's
It's a spiritual, emotional,
right,
whatever.
absolutely.
It's not
yes.
about schluffing.
No.
Because remember on Shabbat, if you don't drive, if you're traditional, you walk to shul.
Right. Uh-huh.
That's so much more work than driving.
Well, when I was living up in north in Englewood, and on occasions that we would go to a temple, it would my husband and I we would go on a Friday night. I was working all week. He was working all week. I had that feeling of sitting in there, that it gave me that feeling of renewal, not physical,
Right.
but resting my head of all the things that went on during the week.
Right.
I had that feeling of renewal.
I mean, I'll tell you that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
You were talking first.
No, go ahead, please.
It's been medically, physically proven, though, that sleep is rest and renewal.
Yes.
That sleep repairs,
Mm-hmm.
and sleep does have a big thing to do with rest.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but I'm not sure that rest has anything to do with Shabbat. It might.
It could
I'm not
be
sure.
part of it.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure. I mean, I'll tell you that for me, Shabbat is. I work on Shabbat.
Yes, that's your
Friday
job.
night and Saturday mornings, I'm working,
Right.
and yet it's a very different quality of work.
Mm-hmm.
It feels different, and I look forward to it. Even though I know I'm working,
Mm-hmm.
even though I know I have to get up early on Saturday morning, I still look forward to Shabbat. It still feels.
Well, it's
Does it
just
feel
that
restful?
you
I
stop
think it does.
doing
Uh,
what you used to do and do something
not
It's
else.
different.
It's not a
You're
physical.
right.
It's not a
different.
physical rest. It's a mental rest.
Although when I get home Saturday afternoon, I usually crash on the couch. So
Yeah,
that,
of course.
that's why at first I was saying it's not physical rest, it's not, but then you started speaking. I think, well, all right, it is a little
And
bit.
living through illness is also, you can see that happen. If the body
Renews.
just shuts off, you can't, your mind cannot
Yeah.
do it. Your mind might want to, and you can't.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's different parts to
It's
that.
very nuanced. The whole idea of Shabbat
Mhm.
and what it's supposed to be for, and what does rest mean, what does work mean, it's it's not clear at all. It's very nuanced. But let's go on. Let's do another commandment. All right,
Where are you?
verse 12.
Now these are
Oh,
all.
this is a good one.
These are all the don'ts.
13.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Number 12 is about mommy and daddy.
Yes. Right.
Honor your father and your mother that you may.
Incoming chat.
Oh gosh, sorry about that. Honor your father and your mother that you may long endure on the land that the Lord your God is assigning to you.
Mm-hmm.
13, 10, 12.
Mm-hmm.
What number?
12.
The fifth commandment.
12.
Yeah, but my 12 doesn't.
You want me to start?
Sorry, I'm just. This is going to keep buzzing unless I send this. Okay. Honor your father and mother that you may long endure in the land that the Lord your God is assigning you. Having finished all that we owe to the Creator, the text turns to deal with God's creatures. It begins with one's father, who is like a co-creator with God in forming his descendants. For God is our first father, and the one who sired us is only our immediate father.
Mhm.
That is why Deuteronomy 5:16 adds, as the Lord your God has commanded you to this commandment. Just as I commanded you about my own honor, meaning God's honor,
Mhm.
so I command you about the honor of the one who participated with me in your creation.
Mhm.
Our verse does not make explicit the nature of this honor, right? What does it mean to honor your parents?
Mhm.
For it can be derived from what we know about the honor due to God. Okay, this is beautiful. This is Ramban, by the way. And so he says that honoring our parents is just like honoring God. And so the way to know how to honor your parents can be learned by how we honor God. So he says a son must acknowledge that his father is his father and not deny him and claim that some other man is his father, nor serve another man for his inheritance or something else that he expects to get from him. And he must not swear falsely by his father's name. Many other things are subsumed under the category of honor, all of which we are commanded. And they are spelled out in the words of our sages, who say explicitly that one's father's honor is like God's honor.
No mothers mentioned.
No, mothers are mentioned.
Okay.
Not in this commentary, but they are in the text. It's your father and your mother.
Right.
So it says the 10 Commandments are inscribed on 2 tablets, 5 on each. The first tablet contains laws regarding man's relationship with God, while the second refers to relationships among people. This casts a revealing light on the significance God attaches to the honor he wants us to show parents. For this commandment was included among those that refer to the honor and reverence that are due to God himself, God's self. When people honor their parents, God regards it as if they honor God. And then it goes on to what you read. God regards it as if they honor God, for as the sages express it, there are 3 partners in a human being: God, Father, and Mother. If someone honors his parents, God considers it as if he had honored God. But if not, God says, I did well not to live among them, for if I had dwelled among them, they would have tormented me as well. And that's from Kiddushin.
Ibn Ezra adds, one who audibly curses his parents is put to death. But one may belittle one's parents without it being known. So basically, you can say bad stuff about your parents, you just have to do it
Behind
quietly.
their back.
Yeah, behind their backs.
Which is what we love.
The term honor refers to deeds that raise the status of parents or provide them with comfort, such as giving them food and drink, dressing them, and escorting them. That's Rashi, but that's Rashi to Leviticus, Leviticus pasuk.
Right. Ish imova aviv tira'u. You shall have awe for your mother and your father, I think, is what he's citing there. And that's the way. That's the traditional understanding of what honor means: feed, clothe, and escort.
So this long endure piece.
Yeah.
Perhaps the intention here is that we will be able to look forward to a long life and not dread going old, because we will have fashioned a society in which the elderly are honored and respected. The commandment is not addressed to children telling them to heed their parents, but to adults enjoining them to continue to honor their elderly parents even when there is no biologic need to. The sages interpret this verse not to command feelings of affection, but to command behavior.
Right.
We are obliged to support and maintain our parents and to avoid shaming them.
Right.
Very
often said that the Torah never tells you to love your parents.
No,
just honor them.
Okay, from Maimonides, now that I have commanded you to acknowledge that I am the creator of all and to honor parents because they have joined me in an act of creating life, guard against destroying the work of my hands in acts of murder. But it's still part of the long endure piece.
I love the idea that this commandment isn't given to children, it's given to adults. Because, and there was a little snippet in there, I think you said, who no longer what is it? Who?
There's no biologic need.
Yeah, that's fascinating because I mean, parents. Excuse me. Children will always find their way to honor their parents when they need something. But when our children are adults and they don't need us, that's when God says,
You want to hear
you have to
something?
respect us.
Something beautiful. I'm living at Allegro now. There was a lovely couple there, and they're not Jewish. A lovely couple who had 12 children.
Oh my
The
goodness.
mother died a couple of months ago. Well, some of the children live here in Florida and far apart. Well, the father is there, and sometimes he's in a wheelchair, sometimes he walks with a cane. But he never eats dinner alone.
Wow.
One of those children are there. Since the mother died, one of those children are there every night to have dinner with him.
Wow.
Every single night.
That's very powerful. Very powerful.
It's beautiful.
Wow.
Right.
Well,
Oh, my
that's
goodness.
like saying a mother can take care of 12 kids, but 12 kids can't take care of one mother.
That's really true.
It
That's
is.
really true.
You're right. And it's did you hear that, Dina, by the way?
I did.
And it's fresh. That's telling if this is really speaking to adult children.
Yes.
That we have to do a better job of respecting our parents.
Yeah, my kids, I keep telling me what I should do.
Well, that's a form of respect.
Yes, it is.
That's love. That's
it.
love. It's annoying, but it's love.
And they tell me what I should do.
I remember my father's big family and who it was among the children who the old parents were there for everybody. And some of them were very helpful and some just, couldn't.
Oh, that's why my daughter came down last week to spend time with me.
I bet that this idea that adult children have a responsibility to honor their parents plays very differently depending on both the society and the time in which you live. Nowadays, when families are so spread out, this means something very different than in the 40s, 50s, almost up to the 80s, when families were, I think, more condensed.
Together.
Right.
Mine are on different things.
Yeah, exactly.
We all do. We all do.
And also the communications. I mean, you can see somebody on the phone.
Right.
It's like a visit.
That's always a question, not only in the Jewish world, but in the technology world. Does that count? Does this
It's
count as Dina and I learning together?
It's a compromise.
Right.
It's not a compromise. It's living within the time in which we are. Times change. It didn't exist in the past. It couldn't happen. When my parents came to America, they were in constant contact with their family by mail. That was slow.
Yeah.
By the time I got married, I was in contact with the family in Europe, with the sisters and brothers, by telephone. Once a month, we were on the phone with each other.
Yeah.
Besides the visiting back and forth, but now my nephew and nieces in Sweden, I can see them.
Right.
It's the times in which we live.
I was up until 12:30 on Monday night watching the Iowa caucus returns.
Yes.
Because I love that stuff, and it was fascinating. I mean, you watch it,
yes.
click up one number, and and then I was watching a news report about the 1980 when it was Reagan. Reagan was a contender, and Bush, Poppy Bush was a contender, and how that year Iowa instituted a computer system so that they could get results faster, because they were saying that people don't want to wait 1 or 2 days,
right?
And the computer system broke, and that year, and the rate at which we get information now and the ways in which we're able to communicate is both amazing. But it also, I think, it really does raise some interesting questions. Going back to the streaming of services, can you pray? And the conservative movement actually wrote a response about this. Can you count in a minion if you're on a video chat? Right? And the answer they came up with was you can count. No, I'm sorry. You can join a minion, but you cannot count in a minion. So you have to have 10 people locally. If you have 10 people, we have 10 people every Friday night, of course.
Yeah.
anybody who watches us online can daven along with us, and they have fulfilled their obligation.
Uh-huh. My personal feeling about all of this technology is that God created everything that exists. The fact that we can create this, everything that we created from, was created by
It all
God.
comes from God. Yeah.
So whatever technology we come up with has to be possible to do.
We're the Jews.
Electricity had to be possible to do if God hadn't created that possibility.
We're
That's
the
the way I
junior
think.
partners.
That's right.
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 I think that, look, the question of whether this constitutes real connection, also, I'm thinking, going back now to parents, my father, my mother is very into technology. She's all the time.
Fabulous.
And so she texts me all the time, and we video chat all the time, and that's real. I mean, that's a real connection for
Sure.
us. My mother-in-law, never.
Mhm.
She wants to be on the phone. That's her way of feeling
Mhm.
connected, or be down here in person. That's her
Mhm.
way of feeling connected. So it also depends on the person.
Sure. If they don't
Well,
feel
yeah.
comfortable, if they don't feel comfortable with the technology.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
saying,
my kids keep yelling at me. I won't get a cell phone.
Oh, you don't have
I'm
a
in
cell
the
phone?
middle.
I don't have a
Well,
cell
I've
phone.
got to get my grandson to help me with the with the
Computer.
camera, because
Oh.
I want to be able to see them.
I have the Skype, and
No, I have Skype, but I haven't used it yet.
I had Skype, but it's disconnected.
No,
Go ahead, please.
I was saying we have a group. I sort of feel in the middle because I have a number of friends. We do sort of both,
Mhm.
and some are a lot better with the technology than
Mhm.
others. But there are a core of us who, almost in helping to live lives like we used to in high school or what have you. I'm going back that far. I could even go back to elementary school. We are on the phone as well as on the internet. And I got very disgusted the other day because there was a lot of chatter and everybody was on the internet to do things faster. And I'm having a problem with my hands. And I said, sorry, I'll be calling you later.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was a whole call thing.
Mhm.
So the people who I would say grew up liking
Mhm.
to talk and communicate and feel what the people are saying
Mhm.
are still very into contact by phone.
You
Yeah.
can hear
Although
you can hear emotion.
Yeah.
You cannot feel it.
Right.
You can
Well,
hear
well,
emotion,
well,
but you
But there's more to it than that. Since my mother moved away, and she's been away 9 months now, I call her more often now than I used to. I call 2 or 3 times a week, and it's not enough. She still wants to see me in person. So
there's
she
a
still wants
contact thing there.
she wants me to be there in the room with her personally, that she can touch me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm among that group.
I don't feel like that. I have 3 daughters. I speak to them once a week.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what this is raising is that what feeling honored as a parent means is different for each person.
Mhm.
What your mother needs to feel honored, what is different than what you need to feel what you need to feel honored.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's very subjective.
Yes, it is. It is.
I don't feel like we should go on to don't murder, because that's going to take a while. But is there anything else on
Honoring?
honoring?
No, that's.
Uh,
I think we
so
understand that.
We can't forget that children are introduced to honoring, and it doesn't play on them maybe as much as till later. But if they've been introduced as kids and watch the adults
Handle each other. Yes,
handling
yes,
each other, they do have some
yes. That's true. Yes,
some more knowledge of
right.
it.
Yes. I can see that. Yes, I can see
Definitely.
my daughter-in-law's parents took care of their elderly aunt, and my children see that,
Right.
and they didn't.
It's instructive. It
Yes,
could be
and-
positive or negative,
And
but
since
it's
they saw
instructive.
that, I can see that they have now done. They're doing that
Similar
with
things.
me, what they saw their parents do to the other generation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't say this with any 100% anything, but women, I think, are more sensitive to the relationships for the most part than a lot of men, although that's not true for
No, not.
everybody.
It depends on how they were brought up in the first place, right? Yes, yes.
Where they were in the
Like-
family, if it
Like
was a
this
large
man I'm
family.
talking about, his son, the one who is closest to him. He's there all the time. He's there. And there's another woman whose son is there all the time.
Dina, were you from a large family?
I have two sisters, but my mother is from a family of 9, and my father was from a family of 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like my family,
You-
but I'm the only one left.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh.
9 and 6. Holy moly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm surprised they only had 3 kids.
11 and 3.
It
No,
was-
really?
well, times change, and economics change, and a big part of it was that my father probably couldn't have provided for more than 3.
Right. Yeah.
There was no Planned Parenthood for birth control.
Right. Right. Right.
Right.
I have no more aunts or uncles or parents. I'm the last. I'm the
Last
last
holdout.
of my generation.
No.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, I had tons of cousins and uncles and aunts.
I don't. Oh, I have cousins. God knows where they are.
Yeah.
But aunts and uncles.
I have 2 cousins.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Dina.
Okay, thank you.
Have a wonderful day. I don't think my mother's back next week either.
She said it was a month.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
yeah.
She said she was
Have you
going to be
heard
away.
from her?
I've seen pictures. She's been
Oh.
sending us pictures, so
So where is she?
I have no idea.
She doesn't tell you where she is at
She's
the
on a
moment.
boat somewhere.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right.